Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first session after that lovely lunch and motivational talk. And this is a very appropriate topic that I'm very excited about, called the Great Sugar Debate. So I would like to take the pleasure to introduce our speaker. Michelle Polfus is a PhD-prepared pediatric nurse practitioner who has extensive background in working with children with obesity and obesity-related comorbidities, both clinically and with her research. She was the previous chair of the Childhood Obesity Special Interest Group through 2014. She is passionate about optimizing the care provided to children and their families in a sensitive and productive manner. Please take the opportunity to welcome Michelle.
So thank you very much for coming here. If you all know it's 70-some degrees outside, so I do appreciate that you're here. And happy Friday the 13th. So now that we have all the formalities out of the way, let's go ahead. I have no disclosures. And I think you've already seen the objectives if you've chosen to come here today. I do want to point out, when we talk about sugar, I'm not saying all sugar is bad. I'm not talking about sugar that's naturally within food. I'm going to be talking about added sugars. So that's a very key point. And with those little clickers, I felt kind of like Oprah, like we could do like interaction, and I told my friend that I'd have like a car under one of your seats, but I don't, so I'm sorry. But it was worth a try. So with this clicker, you're going to read the question, and then you can pick the best answer, and we'll see how far advanced you all are in the room. So I'm going to start the clock. I think I'm going to start the clock. It should be. Yep, it's counting down. So according to the American Heart Association, the mean intake of added sugar per day for the average American is, and we will check out the answer. Look at that. 22.2 teaspoons of sugar. Very good. 50% of the room is on top of it. And then the 31%, that's probably us on a bad day when we have the 30 teaspoons. So I'm not saying that you're wrong. Question number 2. According to the same study, our teenagers are consuming more, less, or the same as the average adult. Technology is not always the best thing to try on Friday the 13th. Not that I'm superstitious or anything. Oh, we have an answer. Yeah. Okay, so you are correct. Our adolescents are literally taking the cake, and they have more. We'll try to limit our questions here. So how many grams equal a teaspoon of sugar? Because I'm sure that we all don't think about grams every day. So, okay. There we go. The answer is 4. And we're going to talk about these more in depth. So this is just to get an idea. So what do we know? Let's put those clickers away for a while and get on to the good stuff here. We know, as a pediatric nurse practitioner, we have an obesity problem with children. We know that 1/3 of our American children are considered overweight or obese. We know that 2/3 of our adults are considered overweight or obese. We know obesity is not something that's easy to answer or to change. It's multifactorial. But what I'm going to tell you today is that added sugar does play a direct role in that obesity. And so as healthcare providers, I do think it's very important that we all are aware of this and can share it with our families that we work with. So as we talked about, 22 teaspoons of sugar on average a day by the average American. That's 66 pounds a year. By the time a child is 4 to 8, they're almost at that average, 21 teaspoons. And our teens definitely are at the highest. Where is this sugar coming from? I love this slide because it very nicely portrays. If you see the top 3, you're going to be looking at your soda and your energy drinks. You're going to be looking at your grains, the dessert grains, and then also your fruit drinks. So if you took away the blue, the maroon, and the green, how much of an effect you would have on added sugar just by those 3 items? So let's go into some background. Naturally occurring sugar is the sugar that is found naturally in food. So your lactose is found in milk. I can't take it away, nor do I want to. That's natural. Added sugar is the sugar that's added at the table or during preparation or processing of the food. That's the different sugar that we want to talk about. What we see on labels is total sugar. So that's a combination of your added and your natural sugars. When we think about simple sugars or complex sugars, you oftentimes will hear them referred to as simple carbohydrates or complex carbohydrates. Your simples are going to be your 1 or 2 molecules of sugar, and they're going to be put together. Now, those are the ones that are very easy to break down. When we take them in, they're basically going right through our digestive system. We get that blood sugar spike, we get an insulin spike, and then it goes right back down again. Now, the complex carbs are the ones that are a little bit harder for our body to digest. So those are the ones that have 3 or more molecules in them. And when you think about those are what we are proponents. We want our kids to be eating, the whole grains, because they take longer to digest. So they don't break down as easily, and then you don't get that big blood sugar spike or insulin spike. You get more of that regulated blood sugar. Now, if you've heard of leptin, I think it's fascinating. Leptin is a hormone that is supposed to tell us we are full. So I want more leptin in my life. I love leptin. Whether or not we listen to leptin is always a little another story. We talked about this in 1994. It came about, and we found that it is in our adipose tissue, and that it's regulated by the hypothalamus. When we have our blood sugar and the insulin spikes, the insulin stimulates leptin to go up to the brain to say, you're full. Now, if that works, life is good. There's also another hormone called ghrelin, and if you've heard of that, that's the one that tells your body you're hungry. So I always think of ghrelin. That's your hunger appetite, leptin, feel full. Sugars, we know, are found naturally in our foods, and we also want to use them because they sweeten the food. They make it taste better, so it's very common to see the sugar added, as we know. Glucose, fructose, and sucrose are some common names of sugars. The one thing about these sugars is we can't tell the difference when we taste them, but our body can tell how we metabolize them, and so it will be different for our body. And the other piece is they technically are all the same amount of energy. They're all 4 calories per gram. So in that way, it's hard to differentiate them. Some of the places that we find our sugars: fruits and vegetables, milk products, honey. Glucose is our preferred energy source. Our body wants to have that for energy and needs it for energy. As we eat our carbs, the glucose will be broken down. It'll either be used for energy or stored in our muscles or liver as glycogen for later. If our storage capacity is full, we're going to store that as fat. When you think of sucrose, you're thinking of table sugar. Table sugar is just 1 molecule of glucose and 1 molecule of fructose. And the reason I bring this up is we're going to talk about fructose a little bit more, so we have to recognize that that is a part of table sugar. We also know that fruits and vegetables contain sucrose. So it's not abnormal to say fructose is not all bad. It's obviously in some good things. When we consume it, though, enzymes in our body will break it back down to the individual molecules. So when we consume that, our body will take it up, break it down, and then, because fructose is metabolized differently, it will go down a different metabolic pathway, and the sucrose goes down the other metabolic pathway, where the more common sugar metabolism occurs. So going into fructose just a little bit more, fructose is found in 3 main areas. You have natural sources like your fruits and vegetables and honey. You also have your table sugar, which we mentioned is about 50% fructose. And then you have this famous high fructose corn syrup. And I think we've all heard about that on the news or somewhere along the way, or if you read labels, you'll see it quite frequently. I put down here that it's 55% fructose. There's also a version that's 42%, and we'll talk about that. So the important thing about fructose that I wanted the takeaway is the reason why fructose gets the bad rap is fructose is metabolized differently than your other sugars. So it is not the preferred energy source for our body. Fructose will go directly and mainly metabolized by our liver, so it bypasses. So then we're going to have more fat production based on that, and more fat deposits within our liver. And as you all know, if you're practicing with children and you think about obesity, we are definitely hearing more about fatty liver disease. There's a direct correlation here. It also does not have the same amount of insulin effect. So if you don't get that same insulin stimulation, you're not going to get that leptin stimulation, so you're not going to get the feeling of fullness. So eating a lot of fructose is not going to give you that same satisfaction. That's very small. I'll read it to you. Based on information provided, I just said that fructose has the ability to increase fat in the body or the liver. I also said that fructose is found in fruits and vegetables. So if we eat too many fruits and vegetables, are we worried about getting fatty liver? Oh, okay, are we there? I cut you down a little fast, I'm sorry. I'm hoping you all know. No. I had problems with the little era, so I apologize for that one. That's fine, I got it. So I think you all would have said that fruits and vegetables are great and we have no worries, and I'm going to show that to you. Now, the fructose that we're talking about negatively, there are definite concerns that if you're having higher intake of fructose on a regular basis, it's going to behave more like fat and cause more fat stimulation in the body or fat production. There are studies that directly show that fructose is linked to higher uric acid levels, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance, visceral adiposity, higher triglycerides, and I think I said fatty liver. So if you put those all together, those are everything we're trying to get rid of, and obviously there's a direct link here. Now, I will say, because I do not want to be completely negative, if you read the studies, they will often, the negative, or the people against the studies will say, well, that study used the highest amount of fructose possible, and if people just use it in moderation, you won't have those issues. You as a consumer or as an educator need to make that decision. But I think the results are very telling or very concerning that we have to be concerned about it ourselves and think about that very thoughtfully. So here's our friend, high fructose corn syrup. This is very common. You will see it on food labels all over the place. The cornstarch is broken down into glucose molecules to make 100% corn syrup. This was developed in 1960, and they loved it because it's a liquid sweetener, and because it's sweeter than sugar, they found they could use less of it and get this very sweet effect, so it saved money. So what business is not going to take advantage of that? And they did. High fructose corn syrup can be made to have either 42% fructose, and that's going to be used in your processed foods, and 55% in your soft drinks. And the other piece about this is it has no fiber to buffer like fruit. And back on that one slide when I said fruits and vegetables are not going to be a concern, the reason for that is because fruits and vegetables naturally have fiber. Mother Nature protected us by that. They did not put fiber in honey or in your soft drinks, so there's a difference here. So just reviewing some background basics, we ingest our carbohydrates, our body converts to blood glucose, our GI tract absorbs it, our pancreas releases our insulin in response to how many carbs we've ate. 80% of the sugar should go to the body organs, 20% will go to the liver. The insulin is going to stimulate the leptin to go to the brain to say you're full, we're not going to eat anymore, and whatever sugar is in excess will be stored as glycogen, and then the further excess will be stored as fat. With fructose, that doesn't follow the 80-20 rule. Because it's going mainly to the liver, the portion is made into glycogen, then the remainder is made into fat. So just reinforcing what I was saying before. You don't get the same insulin effect, you don't get the same leptin effect, you will get higher triglycerides. And I'm not saying that glucose doesn't cause higher triglycerides either. All sugars will have that effect, but the fructose is going to have a higher direct effect. So we know in our minds that we shouldn't be eating all the sugar, but it's there and it tastes good and it's everywhere. So it's kind of that yin and yang or angel and devil. So what is recommended? Well, as we mentioned, 4 grams of sugar is 1 teaspoon. If you're working with a family and you take out their Mountain Dew or you take out a food product and it says 10 grams of sugar, how hard is it for you to say, do you know that it has 10 grams of sugar? And they'll say, yes. Well, what does 10 grams look like? I don't know. And then I'll say, I don't know either, because I've never really learned about it in grams. But if you think 10 teaspoons of sugar or 2 teaspoons of sugar, that makes a lot of difference for people. So bringing it into something they can relate to makes it a much more effectiveness of an educational tool. The FDA does not tell us how much sugar we are supposed to have. So the American Heart Association has come up with some guidelines. For adult women, 6 teaspoons of added sugar. This is not your natural sugar. This is added to the food. 9 teaspoons for men. And for our children, 3 to 6 teaspoons, really dependent on their discretionary calories and their needs. Bottom line, 22 on average, we are way over, and we're definitely not close to our goal. So, the day will come. We will have a new diabetes, I'm sure. Okay, let's see if this one works here. What artificial sweetener was discovered by accident and was supposed to be an insecticide? Take a moment to think about that. I just pressed. I'm pressing to get the clock going, and it doesn't.
My clock must not be showing, but the graph is showing.
Well, now I skipped to that. If I press it enough times, I get it to go, but now we're at the answer, so I don't know what was it.
I don't know if the clock isn't just coming up, but even if the clock's not coming, as long as the question slide is there, we'll still record the
Okay,
answers.
it came up the first time.
The clock did?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll
And we'll still record the answer. Did the answer show the first time?
No, it was like you said the first time, and then it started the second time where it didn't show.
Okay.
Okay. So I was giving you some time to think about that. And the answer, actually, is our Splenda. The story behind this is that there was two scientists working, and they were talking amongst themselves, and they were working on a new pesticide. And one of the scientists, I read this, it's true, someone told me, and I looked it up, and I found it. And one scientist said, test it, and the person thought he said, taste it. And so he tasted it, and he said that it was incredibly sweet. So then they changed things around, and now we have Splenda. I know, all the little fun nuggets you'll get from being inside today. Okay, so artificial sweeteners. How many of your patients ask, can they have diet soda? I don't have a questionnaire for that one, so what do you say? Can they have it? Yeah, I think the answer is yes, no, we don't know. What we do know is that artificial sweeteners provide a very sweet taste. So obviously people like sweetness in general, so that's good. They don't provide calories. People thought this was a gold mine. If I can have my sweet without having the calories, I will for sure lose weight. And it will enhance and extend the flavor. And it's very cheap, so everyone's happy. The provider's happy, the manufacturer's happy, and then the consumer is happy. Robert Lustig, if you are interested in this topic at all, is a huge, wonderful person to read about and has done a lot of research from UCSF. And he talks about pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics related to artificial sweeteners. And I love the way he explained it, so I want to share it. Pharmacokinetics is what does our body do to the drug? If we take amoxicillin, what will our body do to it? On the flip side, the pharmacodynamics is what will the antibiotic do to our body? So hopefully in the FDA world, we will know both of those answers. With artificial sweeteners, we only know what our body does to the drug. We don't know definitively what the drug does to our body yet, and it has not been mandated to know. So the answer to that is when a patient asks, what do you think about it? You can tell them your opinion, but we don't have a definitive answer. So I'm sorry, I wish I did. We do not have that fully evidence-based answer that we all want. So replacing high energy sugar or corn syrup is a fantastic idea, and people like it in theory. And as I mentioned, it should help weight loss if you're not having the calories. If you use it in gum or medicines, it's not going to have direct sugar on your teeth, so hopefully you're not going to have as many dental caries. And it allows our individuals with diabetes to have a more varied diet. So there are some proponents. There are some concerns. When we ingest artificial sweeteners, we know that it mimics regular sugar or even is sweeter than regular sugar. So what our brain does, because our brain is so smart, it says, yay, I'm getting all of this sweetness, but then the calories don't follow. So the theory behind that is your brain's going to say, you didn't get the calories that you were expecting to get from that sugar rush or the sweet rush, so it's going to help you go and find it. So in essence, what the thought is that you're ending up eating more because your brain is telling you that you still want to satisfy what you did not fulfill. The thought is that individuals who use artificial sweeteners regularly will actually gain weight. And the other thing that we've all thought of is, I'm having my Diet Coke so I can have my fries. You can justify it in your mind. Studies, because you have to use some evidence, studies have shown diet sodas have been linked to type 2 diabetes, increased diet sodas. Artificial sweeteners are sweeter than regular sugar, so we lose that sensitivity to the taste of sweetness. So it takes more. If you have one of those friends, which I wish I was that person that said, I don't eat sweets, and then they all of a sudden have an apple or a peach, they say, oh, it's so sweet. Now, if you're eating a lot of sugar all the time, you're kind of immune to it, so you're like, yeah, it is kind of sweet, but so is my gummy bear and my candy bar or whatever else. So you lose that sensitivity. In animal studies, rats that consumed artificial sweeteners were found to have eaten more food, have a slower metabolism, put on more body fat, even if they ate fewer calories. Going back to that hormone response, and I can't tell you exactly why, but that's what they're seeing. In human studies with matched controls, increased weight gain is seen with the use of artificial sweeteners. Now, the opposite will say, well, there are studies that refute that. Again, you need to make that decision. They will definitely say the concern is the amount ingested, so moderation is usually the best answer, but it's really not an evidence-based answer either. It's kind of a cop-out, isn't it? Moderation, moderation. Okay, fiber. So when fiber is attached to food being consumed, there's a lot of good things that happen. It slows the rate at which the food enters our bloodstream. It increases the speed that the food goes through the digestive process. And it allows better blood sugar regulation. So you don't get those up and down spikes of your sugar and your insulin. You get better sugar control and cholesterol levels. And it also makes you feel full longer. That's why you're telling the child, have a piece of whole wheat toast, 100% whole wheat toast, versus Lucky Charms for breakfast, because you're hoping that they're going to be able to stay full until lunchtime versus 1 or 2 hours later when the Lucky Charms are already gone through the body. It also improves constipation if it's used with water. So fiber is a friend. There are 2 types of fiber, not as critical to know, but important, I think, for background: soluble and insoluble. Your soluble fibers are more of your fruits and vegetables, beans and nuts, and those are going to help with your insulin levels and cholesterol levels. Now, your insoluble fibers are not digested or broken down, and those are going to be more of that scouring pad in your intestinal tract, and they help with constipation. So I don't think you have to pick and choose. I think all fiber is good, but just knowing that it has 2 purposes based on what type of fiber you use. Recommended daily allowance, nothing new here, 25 to 35 grams for adults. For children, the general age plus 5 rule works well. So if a child is 10, plus 5, 15 grams a day. The American Heart does something a little bit more unique, a little more confusing. They say 14 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories consumed. I just stick with the age. I think it's a little bit easier. So is sugar addictive? That's the other concern with sugar, because they're all eating it all the time. We must be addicted to it. What we eat is based on 2 systems in our body. We have our homeostatic system and our hedonic system. The homeostatic system, that's your appetite regulation. This is your hormones telling your body you're full or you're hungry, and then you eat based on your responses. So your brain is controlling it. You have hunger cues, you eat, they go away. The hedonic system is the one that we can't seem to control as well. That is the one that if you are in the mall and you are completely full, you just ate, and you weren't even thinking you were hungry, but you went by Cinnabon, you're suddenly thinking about a Cinnarroll. That's your hedonic system. So they are making a lot of money on our hedonic system. It's a physiological response involving our reward center in our brain. So it's very powerful. Response to smells, sights, and thoughts about food. Neuroimaging studies have looked at this, and they have found that high fat, high sugar, and high salt foods trigger our reward system to go off like a slot machine, I guess. And so that reward center lights up, dopamine is released, we feel very happy and content. Our ghrelin hormone is released, so then we even feel more hungry, because remember, ghrelin is your appetite hunger. And then we see the same effect that drugs or alcohol have on a person who's addicted to them. So people will say, and maybe it's a subset of people that have this, but sugar can have that similar effect as an addiction. Studies also show that that dopamine response that we all want and crave, even though we don't know that's what we're looking for, if you're overdoing it, that you'll start to blunt your dopamine response. So it takes more and more to get the same response. So just like the person who ends up using more and more of their drug or alcohol to get the response, there is that potential you're going to get more and more need for sugar to get the same response. So it's a cycle, or it's thought to be a cycle. You eat sugar, you crave it, your blood sugar spikes, then you have a massive drop down after your insulin is released, and now you're hungry again. And then you start the process all over. Why is it important? Well, In the past, we know sugar has been related to obesity, the obesity comorbidities, and dental caries. What this talk is hopefully pointing out is it's not just sugar, obesity, secondary problems. There are now direct links showing sugar goes directly to those problems too. So we now have independent risk factor from sugar being found in cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance, diabetes, fatty liver disease. So when we're thinking of obesity, if you're eating a lot of excess calories from sugar and obesity occurs, we don't know which one comes first, chicken or the egg, but we see the same comorbidities, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, fatty liver, sleep apnea, psychological issues. Every organ in the body is affected by obesity. We know that. Some studies that frame this a little bit more. The Framingham Heart Study showed consumption of greater than one soft drink a day significantly increased the odds of having high blood pressure. In the NHANES survey for adolescents, the more sugar-sweetened beverage consumption was associated with higher serum uric acid levels and higher systolic blood pressures. Hyperlipidemia. Lipids are a problem. When we use the carbohydrates to replace the dietary fats, you all know the trend, low fat, low fat, low fat. What do you think they put in place of the fat when they lost the flavor? They put sugar. So the type of carbohydrate you're eating will make a difference. Fruits and vegetables and whole grains obviously are good things. They will not raise your triglycerides, but your fruit juice, your sodas, your bakery items are going to have a direct effect on your triglycerides. And we know that their triglycerides are an independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease. We also see that cardiovascular disease mortality is increased by having added sugar. This slide is a little busy. If you go to the third bullet on this side, basically, if you're taking in more than 15% of your daily calories in added sugar, which is 1 20-ounce Mountain Dew for a 2,000 calorie a day diet, you're going to have a higher risk of dying from cardiovascular disease. Now, if you're only doing that one Mountain Dew, you can kind of weigh your odds. If you're taking in up to 1/3 of your daily calories from added sugar, you've now increased your odds of having that cardiovascular disease death fourfold. Insulin resistance. Insulin is its key to everything. It underlies all of this. So and I've said this over and over, but just to get it down, insulin resistance, if you have normal consumption of carbohydrates, you're not in excess, you eat, blood sugar rises, carbohydrates are consumed, insulin is released, blood sugars go back down to normal, muscle, liver, and fat cells take in the sugar, remove it from the bloodstream, you're using it for energy, the person stays lean, and then they store some as glycogen, life is all good. Now here's the flip side. Excess consumption of the carbohydrates, especially processed carbohydrates on a regular basis, your muscle and fat will stop reacting to the pancreas's release of insulin. So your insulin doesn't work as well. You might use the whole analogy of the rusty key doesn't open up the door when you're talking to your patients. The liver and muscle only have so much capacity to store the excess sugar, so it has to go somewhere. It's going to be diverted to your fat cells. The blood sugars the levels are not brought down or not brought down immediately, so the pancreas is trying to help you out and will send more insulin to the problem consistently, and we all know our pancreas is not infallible. Eventually it can run out of the insulin, so you start with your insulin resistance, then you have high insulin levels, and then you become a type 2 diabetic. There's a process here, and we could catch it early, but it all will work in that same progression. So excess insulin is known to promote abdominal fat storage, increased triglyceride levels, like I mentioned, future cardiovascular risk, heart disease. And this study, which I have listed on the bottom, and this actually came up in our business meeting this morning, so I'm not sure if anyone will pick up on it, but this was the quote. It's not the overconsumption of calories that leads to obesity and then diabetes. It's really the refined carbs or processed foods and added sugars that lead to insulin resistance, which starts the cascade down to high insulin levels and obesity and diabetes. So it's just shifting away. Our fatty liver disease. Fructose plays a huge role, not that the other sugars don't, but we talked about why. Increased fat generation in the liver. It reduces our ability to have fatty acid oxidation. Both of these lead to increased fat sitting there, being stored. Then you have inflammation, and then more insulin resistance. So it's a downward progression. And you start the cascade here where fat accumulates in your liver, you have inflammation and scarring, and then you have cirrhosis. And now we're talking about fatty liver disease in children 8 years old. So you don't need this to happen. Now, the hard part as a provider is if you ask them if they have any symptoms, what are the symptoms for fatty liver disease? It's very silent. You might get a stomach ache, who knows? But if you run an ALT and an AST and you see elevation and you see it repeatedly, that's going to be a good red flag for you to be knowing we have to stop this before we get to the farther point, or we have to do a biopsy to find out where we are on the progression. Dental caries. I don't think we learned as much about dental caries in school when I went to school back in the old days, and I didn't walk 5 miles. I'm just saying back then. We didn't learn as much, but it's very common now that we need to talk about this with our families. And so what we find out is that we have acid-producing bacteria that sits on our teeth at all times. It's plaque. And then when we eat the carbs, glucose, fructose, sucrose, cooked starches, it turns it into lactic acid. So now the plaque becomes acidic, and it's sitting on our teeth. That will eventually hurt our mineralization of our teeth. It hurts tooth structure. When it breaks down the tooth structure, it allows that bacteria to enter the tooth and cause a dental carie. So the dental world will say, or not dentists, but the dental world will say it's not just sugar on the teeth. There's a lot of reasons why you can have problems with dental caries. You can have more plaque-producing bacteria than the next person. You could have poor eating habits where you're eating at night before you go to bed and then it sits on your teeth overnight. You might not have as good of oral hygiene practices, or you might not be using fluoride enough. Salivary flow. You might just be a person who doesn't have a lot of saliva. Saliva is our key here. It helps remineralize our teeth, and the balance between the acid production and our salivary recovery determines how susceptible we are to the dental caries. So if you're continuously grazing throughout the day, that's a problem. If you can eat meals separated out, if you can brush your teeth, that's going to make a difference. So the amount of sugar consumed is, from some viewpoints, less important than how well you take care of your teeth. So they will focus on prevention. And if you read your NAPNAP daily news items you get in the email, I think it was, my days are very goofed up, but maybe Tuesday or Wednesday of this week, there was something in there talking about back in the 1960s, the dental groups were behind it, and they really decided not to talk about sugar. They talked about prevention. And they found that there was some conflict of interest in that. I think you need to talk about them both. And then the obvious answer here, sticky foods like breads or raisins or gummy bears that sit in your teeth longer do have more risk for causing that bacteria to turn into a dental carie. So preventing it, what can we tell our families? We want to highlight grazing. We don't want to be eating, drinking all day long. We want to promote water instead of other sweetened beverages. We want to use fluoride toothpaste, or if you're in the country, make sure you're getting fluoride. You want to decrease eating or drinking before bed. And the biggest thing, which we all say it, but just remembering why we're saying it, don't let the kiddos walk around with that bottle or that sippy cup full of juice or milk or even soda. I've seen it. I know it happens. And definitely don't let them go to bed with it. That's where that newborn, the teeth get all bad because the milk is sitting there. And we know milk has natural sugars. So Calvin and Hobbes here, if you can read that. How much sugar is already in our food, and how much do we decide to add to our food? Bottom line, we definitely are taking too much in. So what are we going to do about it? We need to be able to identify sugar. We need to become detectives. There is no easy answer. Your families are going to be frustrated. You will be frustrated trying to tell your families because there is no easy answer. Sugar can have multiple different names. If you look this up, you can see 50, 64. I chose a nice even number here. The key to this is instead of trying to remember 50 names of sugar, try to remember that the majority of sugars are going to end in the letters OSE. If it has OSE on it, it's a sugar. And then you have some of your obvious ones like honey, molasses. Hopefully you can think about those as sugar. Corn syrup. And then there's some that you're like, what is maltodextrin? I don't really know, but I'm telling you it's a sugar. So we want to try to be able to identify it on a food label. If we all decide, or our families decide, that we want to eat processed foods, and honestly, it's there, You have to be able to make the best decision for your family or your patient possible. So, if you haven't looked at the slides, I just have to share this one. This was a true advertisement in 1956, and if you can't read it, this young man is 11 months old, and he isn't our youngest customer by any means. For 7-Up is so pure and wholesome, you can even give it to babies and feel good about it. Look at the back of a 7-Up bottle. Notice that all our ingredients are listed. That isn't required of soft drinks, you know, but we're proud to do it, and we think you're pleased that we do it. By the way, Mom, when it comes to those toddlers, if they have to be coaxed to drink their milk, try this. Add 7-Up to the milk in equal parts. Pouring the 7-Up gently into the milk, it's a wholesome combination, and it works. Make it your family drink. So, I can honestly say I was not alive in 1956. I can not usually say those good things, as far as I'm not, but it's not that long ago. Let's just be honest. And so, marketers will do whatever it takes. If they want to help you have your children drink milk, they're going to use whatever they can to do this. Or they want you to buy their product, they're going to find a way to say it'll help drink milk with it. Marketing. We are up against billions of dollars being spent on marketing by our businesses that are up trying to sell their product. I truly believe we as a society have created a problem, not intentionally, but it's kind of one of those everything good comes with something not so good. With technology, we have so much technology. We have iPads, we have phones, we have computers. We have the ability, everyone in this room can probably go into their bag or their purse and find a screen to connect with technology. Now that's great in a lot of ways, but on the opposite, we have inactivity. We are not as active. Our kids are not as active. So everything good comes with a flip side. Now, with the marketing of sugar, I believe as a society, we have demanded fast, convenience, easy. I don't have time to go make a homemade meal. I want something quick, I want it on my table, and I want to feed my family. So marketers or the businesses say, we'll help you with that, gladly. And they do. They come up with new products every day. If you are ever, which I know you don't have time, but if you ever just go down the grocery store aisles, there will be a new product all the time, and it's some crazy idea. You're like, oh, perfect, why didn't I think of that? So, you're up against billions of dollars that we have asked for. And when they do this marketing or these new creations of foods, they're very enticing. The packaging is enticing. We don't see black and white bags like the generic bags used to be. We see colorful, we see cartoon characters, we see different nice fun words or healthy words. So healthy names. Vitamin water. If I'm going to drink water, why wouldn't I not want to drink vitamin water because it has vitamins? Or smart water. Or if I want my child who loves SpongeBob, he's going to say, I want the Pop-Tarts, and I don't see SpongeBob on the carrots. Product placement. You all know if you're in the grocery store, where did the aisles get placed? The cereal aisle is a great example. If the child is at the cart level or the low level walking alongside, that's where all your sugar items are going to be. The top level is going to be all your brand cereals. They're not going to switch them around. And it's all very intentional. They are very smart when they use phrases. Made with whole grain. Made with real fruit. Immune support. Well, that's got to be good for me. I will buy it. The Kellogg's frog here, I don't know his name, but I found this fascinating because I am old enough to remember. They used to be called Sugar Smacks. And I ate Sugar Smacks on Saturday morning watching cartoons. Somewhere along the line, the advertiser said, people don't want to eat direct sugar, or maybe it's not a good idea for their parents to buy sugar for their kids, so they changed it to Honey Smacks. How smart was that? Because honey definitely sounds more healthy than Sugar Smacks. And there's no change in the cereal. The other thing that they have done, because they are very smart, is they say, well, people don't want to see a high amount of sugar, a high amount of fat, a high amount of calories. So why don't we just decrease the servings or increase the serving sizes? So if you look at a food label and you see the number here for this Mountain Dew, sugar's 31 grams. Okay. Well, they forget to tell you that 20 ounce, and we've all drank a 20 ounce of something before, that 20 ounce Mountain Dew, they're telling you you're going to share it with 2.5 people. Remember, 2.5 servings are in that. So when you're sharing that with your friends, which I've not found a half person to share it with or anyone else, you are now drinking, if you decide not to share it, you're not getting 31 grams of sugar, you're getting 93 grams of sugar. Or not 93, I did my math actually earlier. It's 70 some, I think. So it's outrageous. Yeah, 77 grams. Oh, 77.5. So, again, telling your patient, do you really want your child to have 77 grams of sugar? And they'll say, no. But then if you showed them 19 teaspoons of sugar, or 19.4 teaspoons of sugar, then they're definitely going to say, no way. And that's what would be in that 20-ounce soda. Your families want to be smart with their money. How do you explain to them that if they go to the 7-Eleven and they see that the big gulp or the super double gulp is only 20 cents more? How can you tell them not to save money and get that? It's definitely a better cost savings, but it's not better for them. So our best suggestion or advice is to read ingredients. In the best perfect world, you want to find foods that have 5 ingredients or less. That's not easy to do. Preferably, you'd like to have foods that have 1 ingredient, but we go up to 5 to give a little leeway. The other piece that you have to know is ingredients are listed in the amount that they are used in the product. So if you're looking at an ingredient list, they start with the one that they have the most of, and it goes down to the least. Now that used to be kind of nice because you could tell a family member, if you see sugar as one of the top ingredients, stay away. Aha, the advertisers and the marketers say, we have a fix for that. Instead of putting 20 grams of sucrose in that product, why don't we put 5 grams of fructose, 5 grams of molasses, 5 grams of honey, and 5 grams of sucrose? Now it's not 20 grams, and it can be spread out down the line of the ingredient list. That makes me mad because I thought I was pretty smart. You look at that. All of those labels in yellow are sugars. This is an actual product. And then on top of it, the ones in pink are your artificial sweeteners. So if it wasn't sweet enough having 5, 6, 7 things of sugar, it's adding some artificial sweetener to make it more sweet. That is something really frustrating and hard to share with families. And I think on that one, the sugar for one of those small bars is 7 grams, so almost 2 teaspoons of sugar. And it comes out to be 4 calories per gram. So 28 calories of 100, almost 1/3 of those calories are from sugar. So, yeah. Sometimes I think we're not all. I think I would do this sometime. I would be like, wow, that's surprising. So food labels. Food labels are something we're trying to figure out. And luckily, the FDA is helping us, and they are proposing new food labels. The food label was introduced 20 years ago, and the FDA proposed to update this last year. It is still under final consideration, so we will not see them for a while. What they are going to do is they are going to, old is on this side, new is on the other side, to your right. The calories are going to make it bigger, so you can standing out more. They're going to actually change the servings. They're not expecting you to share that with 2.5 people anymore. They're going to make it more realistic. And then they're going to highlight it even more. And they're also going to add added sugars. So the person doesn't have to have a calculator or a chemistry degree to figure out how many added sugars are in there. So this will be coming eventually, we hope, but I don't have a date to share with you. So reviewing some popular food items, let's try our fun friend again. How much of our packaged food contains added sugar? Okay, I'm going to go to the answer, which is 74%. I'd love to see what you guys answered. Oh, there we go. You knew it. You're on top of it. How many grams of sugar are in a 12-ounce can of Coca-Cola? Okay, I'm going to play this game and see if I can get it to go. Pressing. I don't want to to give away the answer, but I will. 39 is the answer. Linda, I'm sorry. We're stuck again. No sugar, remember? Artificial sweetener. Yes, but you're going to think that you want to get... Oh, Linda, come back. Sorry. It's very finicky up here. I don't know what to tell you. So 39 was the answer, so 65%. Okay, now we'll do... I'm sorry, making you up and down. Okay, so let's go through a few of these. Yogurt. Yogurt's good for us. This is an original yogurt for 6 ounces, and it has 26 grams of sugar, which is 6.2 teaspoons in that 6 ounces. Now, remember, yogurt has milk in it. Lactose is natural. We expect to have some sugar in that. That's okay. We just don't want all the extra added sugar. But there's no way currently to tell by looking at that food label. So lactose in milk is naturally occurring. Plain yogurt would have no added sugar. Plain yogurt for 6 ounces of a container would have 12 grams of naturally occurring lactose. So 12 is not necessary for that yogurt. Now, the one that we saw was 26 grams, which means 14 grams were added to that for flavoring. So 3.5 teaspoons were added to that to make up the total of the 6.2 teaspoons. And same question as far as Diet Coke. What about your light yogurt? Well, you use low-calorie sweeteners. So they probably will still only have 12 to 14 grams of sugar, but then you're dealing with artificial sweeteners. Go back to slide 35 and think about what you want to do about that. Granola bars. So this granola bar here, the second ingredient is sugar. The fourth or fifth ingredient is honey. And then one of your last ingredients are sugar syrup. So adding those all together, there's 3 teaspoons of sugar in 2 of these bars, if you know they come in 2s. And that sugars are about 1/3 of the calories again. Cheerios. I didn't go for the obvious sugar smacks. I went right for Cheerios, which are good for you. I mean, I'm not saying I love Cheerios, but what I want to point out is Honey Nut Cheerios compared to Cheerios, this is just an interesting fact. Honey Nut Cheerios has 9 grams of sugar. Your regular Cheerios has 1 gram. And why do they decide that with Honey Nut Cheerios, you only get 3/4 of a cup of a serving size versus 1 cup for your Cheerios? I would think they're pretty similar. So if you actually made it into 1 cup of Honey Nut Cheerios to match your 1 cup, then you're going to get more than 9 grams of sugar. So it's another interesting concept of what are they doing to us and why. Our Lucky Charms, I think you might be surprised. It's not as outrageous as you might think, but they are magically delicious, and they have 10 grams of sugar. And I've had patients many times, but they're made with whole grains. And I say, I want to believe you too. I love that idea. But it's not 100% whole grain, and it's still, looking at it, you're still getting 10 grams of sugar, 2.5 teaspoons for 3/4 of a cup of Lucky Charms. And who in here only eats 3/4 of a cup of cereal? Okay, so enough said. Condiments. Here's our barbecue sauce. We use barbecue sauce for many things. For 2 tablespoons of barbecue sauce, 3 teaspoons of sugar. For 1 tablespoon of ketchup, 4 grams or 1 teaspoon of sugar. Spaghetti sauces. Your red sauces have more than your white sauces. So in this, I didn't pick the highest one, but this spaghetti sauce, for the example, has 10 grams for 2.5 teaspoons and 1/2 a cup. And the low-fat craze, so this is fat-free dressing, honey Dijon dressing, and it has 1 teaspoon of sugar for every 2 tablespoons of the dressing. And corn syrup, sugar are in the first 4 ingredients. Every now and then, a little Ben & Jerry's or a good ice cream. But if you want to be healthy, everyone's going to say, well, go for the frozen yogurt version. Well, frozen yogurt is on the right side, and your regular is on this side. You do have less fat in your frozen yogurt. You do have some less calories, but your sugars are actually more in your frozen yogurt. So it pays to read the label. 6 teaspoons in the froyo, 5 teaspoons in the regular ice cream. Krispy Kreme donuts. Each Krispy Kreme donut has 10 grams of sugar. So 6 of these little donuts are 60 grams. Now, we've all waited in lines at Starbucks here, and we paid our $8 or $10 for our Frappuccino. That Frappuccino has 64 grams of sugar. Remember, 64 divided by 4, I didn't do all the math in my head, that's like 16 grams of, or 16 teaspoons of sugar or something. It's a lot. Think about that. Snapple's got to be healthy. Well, it's about 40 grams, 39 in the Snapple, 40 grams in the Krispy Kreme donuts. Milk. We need to talk about milk. Our children and milk. So, the low-fat white milk on the side has 11 grams of sugar. Now, the low-fat chocolate milk, remember they're low-fat, on the other side has 28 grams of sugar. So that's 17 grams of sugar added to the chocolate milk, or added, to the white milk to make chocolate milk. That is additionally 4 teaspoons of added sugar. So another way to think about this is with your chocolate milk, you're having a glass of milk plus a 5-ounce Coke every time you allow the child to have chocolate milk versus white milk. Again, your choice, but I want you to be educated to make the choice. So what are we going to do about it? We need to find some strategies. Well, we can't have a big soda, so I'll have 2 small sodas, and then everything's going to be okay. We don't want government to tell us what to do, so we're going to say no to that. We'll show them. Where to start? The famous graph is back here. If I'm going to try to make a difference, I'm not going to pick the yeast breads that is that little green line over here. I'm going to pick that blue area. I'm going to say most bang for my buck, sugar sweetened beverages. And this doesn't even count the fruit juices, which is the third green area. So I'm going to go for drinks first and my grain-based desserts. If I can work on those 3 or just that one, I'm going to have a lot more effectiveness. So we're not picking on sugar-sweetened beverages. I'm just being smart about it. And if we were abusing some other food, I would pick that out. If it was bananas, I would say it, but it's not. It's sugar-sweetened beverages. So this is something by the Milken Institute, and I have all my references at the end. You can read about this more. It's a nonprofit group who did a lot of studies and recommendations. Reducing 3 sugary drinks per person per month in the U.S. would reduce the number of obese Americans by 2.6 million and save more than $25 billion of our healthcare costs by 2030. They do recommend make the prices for those sugar-sweetened beverages higher. Make someone think about it twice, or make them have to pay it if they really want it. Try to discourage it any way you can. Brian Wansink is a Cornell University researcher, and he does a lot of psychological studies, and he talks about placing it in different places. When they took a cafeteria and they put chocolate milk behind the white milk, I think it's just our society, we're lazy. Kids took the white milk in front. They didn't reach back for the chocolate milk as much. It's true. There are simple things you can do psychologically to help. So if you can find a way to make that sugar drink harder or not as easy to get, I think it will have an effect. Berkeley, California, awesome. They are the first U.S. city to pass a tax on sugar-sweetened beverages, and I've just shared my opinion on this, and you do not need to agree with it. What they are saying is 1 cent per ounce tax on sugar-sweetened beverages will be performed, and they will make $1 million per year that they will use towards diabetes, obesity, and related disease prevention and treatment. They are not the only ones that have tried this. Many places in California and other states have tried it. They get to a point and they get blocked down. They can maybe get close, but the people say we don't want government to make that decision for us. So Connecticut is talking about it also. Let's see if we can get this here. Is the U.S. behind or are we ahead on our ideas about this whole taxation program? Okay. Oh, yep, there we are. Okay, so you are right. 15 other countries are ahead of us on this idea. And whether you think that you like the idea or not, I do think it's going to come, and you're going to hear more about it. So I would just like to share that with you. So strategies to reduce. We're running out of time. The perimeter of the grocery store. It doesn't matter what state you're in, what city you're in. Most grocery stores are all made up the same way. Bagged, processed, boxed items are in the center. The perimeter is going to be your fruits and your vegetables and your dairy. And those are going to be your whole foods more often. So if you can stick to the perimeter and just sneak into the middle aisles occasionally, it's better for our families. You want to stay away from foods that have more than 5 ingredients. If they are boxed or bagged, stay away. Avoid your low-fat or fat-free. I know the trend was that. I know everyone said it, but now we are changing our tune. You want to increase fiber, but you want to increase it naturally. You don't want to look for the foods that just add chemical fiber. You really want the foods that naturally have the fiber, like fruits and vegetables, beans and nuts. Try to decrease sugar so you can become more sensitive to the taste of it again. And think before you drink. If you're choosing to have it, acknowledge what you're having or be aware of it. I think it's your choice, but you have to be smart about it. And then as a nurse practitioner, we have to be aware of overweight and obesity. It's out there, so do the screening, do the labs, educate our families about added sugar. You don't have a lot of time in your visits. If you have to pick one little pearl, this might be it. Educate your staff so they can help reinforce what you're teaching. 53210, this has been modified all over the United States, but it's an easy little mantra to follow, and it's good for our families. And then as a nurse practitioner, volunteer for your school boards, be on any policy action that you can and believe in, concession stands, no sweetened beverages in our schools, and role model good behaviors for our families. And eat dinner as a family. I don't have that on there, but that's obvious. And don't reward with sugar items. Those are obvious too, but and they're important to point out. I have references, so those will be on all your slides. Thank you. Thank you very much.